I'm Mario Martinez Jr., CEO and founder of Vengreso, and we are the creators of flymessage.io, the free personal writing assistant and text expander application. On each episode of this podcast, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you grow your sales numbers at scale. So, get your pen and paper or iPad and keyboard and start taking notes as you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Korn Ferry. Korn Ferry integrates their consultancy, Miller Heiman sales methodology, and technology to bring you Korn Ferry Sell for Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics 365. Learn more at kornferry.com/sales effectiveness. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast, and we're in a new year. Guess what? This is season 6 of the Modern Selling Podcast, and I couldn't be more excited about having this episode published. So thank you for listening in. For all of you who've been following for many years, I appreciate what you've done. Now, today's episode, I've got none other than my friend, Mr. Jerry Brooner. He is the president of Global Field Operations at Enable. Jerry, welcome to the show, my man.
Mario, how are you? Good catching up with you again.
I'm excited to have you here. Just do me a favor, give a little background about yourself and how you ended up in sales leadership, and definitely about Enable for sure. Tell us a little about Enable, but then I got one very special question for you as well.
Okay. Let me just start with Enable, the real easy short. We're a software as a service company for manufacturers, distributors, and retailers to manage their business-to-business incentives and trading agreements. Okay. For me, just a little background. I've been Enable on 2 years now. It's crazy. When I joined Enable, I think I was employee 74, and we're now 550 plus employees and growing quickly. So we've had a really great run these last 2 years, and it's been exciting. Before this, I spent time at companies like Workday, Dropbox, SAP, Scout. Way back when I started my career at a little software company called Siebel Systems. That got disrupted by a cloud company called Salesforce. And that's part of the story and my growth into sales leadership. So I'm happy to discuss that more with you later on today, Mario.
You know what I love about your background, though, is that you've actually had multiple roles. You've been in the sales operations side. You've been on the channel side. You've been in the marketing side. And then you started, I think if I'm not mistaken, didn't you go from a director of marketing at Genesis and you went into a individual sales role as an account executive at SAP, yeah?
Yes. I always thought when I went in school, the leaders that I really admired, and I looked at all of them, right? You know, Ellison, Welch, Drucker, like all the great leaders I thought out there, however I felt about them personally, just professional success. And I noticed they had great experience across multiple disciplines. So they worked in different business units. And if my goal was to be a leader one day over a big business unit, I had to learn how to run each of these. So I went about looking at each different skill set and adding a skill set tool into my bag, and be that, marketing, operations, strategy, sales, all of those I did for a year. By the way, I was not really good at marketing. I was really bad at operations. But after doing it for a year, I learned some basics, and I learned what it was and how to best utilize it. So I learned all the good things that I was not very good at, but I learned from it, and then now it really helped me today.
And then your calling came to the right side, the light side, which was the sales calling. And I love, your story, Jerry, because you progressed from as an AE up through, large enterprise. And then you went over to Dropbox and Workday as the chief revenue officer. And then now over at Enable, and as president and over sales operations, enablement, etc. So it's a great story. All of you listening in, I like to have folks that really have a lot of depth and that have been in the field. And what I was most interested in is that you've been in different disciplines, Jerry, and you usually don't find those that have crossed over from marketing to sales or sales to marketing. But I love that about you. Now, everybody wants to know, I always ask this question on my podcast. Tell us something nobody knows about you, even if they're looking at any or all of your social profiles. And Jerry, I'm looking for something juicy. Just don't confess any grave sins.
There are lots of skeletons that could come out, Mario, as I'm sure most people. I think something very unique that no one knows, I was actually born in a Navy base in Bangkok, Thailand. My father was in the Navy. He never graduated high school. I was born the Navy kid that moved around a lot, and I didn't speak English until I was almost 7 years old. And English was my second language. So I was brought over here for school, but I didn't speak English. And so I think that taught me a lot about fitting in and talking to people and coming and moving a lot and getting to know people. So.
Wow, interesting. So your native tongue then, or your first language, was Thai?
Yes, my first language is Thai, and my accent is still pretty good from what people tell me.
Wow. And do you still speak Thai today?
I still speak a little Thai today. It's not as often, but those great Thai restaurants that used to be in the Mission in San Francisco, Mario, along with all the other good restaurants there, I can walk in and I can tell when people aren't Thai. If I walk into a restaurant, I'm like, I don't know what language you're speaking, but it's not Thai.
All right, very good. All right, interesting. All right, that's good to know. So, pretty awesome there. Thanks for sharing that. Well, let's get into some meat here, Jerry. What we want to talk a little bit about. We got a lot of topics that we can spend some time on, but hyper growth enablement. This is a hot topic, right? Because in our economy today, there are so many companies that are being challenged by how to drive more sales, whether that's product-led growth, sales-led growth, whether that's through marketing or whatever the channel might be. Hypergrowth enablement. I know you've got an opinion about this. Spend a little time talking about what it is and what that means.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. And I've worked at some of the largest companies, SAP, Dropbox, Workday, and enablement at startups. If you go into most startups and you say, who is your enablement hiring, and tell me your enablement plan for people and coming on, and they'll look at you strange. Their main thing is, I need to drive sales, so I go hire a bunch of account executives. Or I need to go hire a bunch of BDRs or do demand gen events and all that stuff. All that is great. Hiring AEs is important, the light side, all right? But the moment an AE starts, if you don't train them, you don't certify them, you don't give them the tools to succeed, that's wasted, and then they're gone and you're not helping yourself at all. I went to when I joined some of the largest companies, I got there and it was a 1-day session, right? I got my laptop. They said, here's your territory, here's your laptop, here's your book, and good luck. We'll see you when you bring a deal in. And I was off and running. I thought that was so baffling. Why would you people spend tens of millions of dollars recruiting account executives or any role, tens of millions, interview process, recruiting, and then they get there on day one and no one talks to them, or no one helps them, or no one measures them, or no one gives them a plan to be successful. So I think enablement is underutilized and often overlooked, especially at startup world. So what we do here at Enable is we make sure that they have all the resources to be successful. And by that, I mean, 2 weeks before someone starts, anybody, not just an account executive, 2 weeks from them to start, they get a welcome email, right? That's pretty standard. It's a little video from me, Mario. It's not as good as yours podcast, but it's a little video from me. Hi, welcome to Enable. I'm Jerry, excited. But what also contains is, here's some background on our industry. Here's some pre-work. Background industry, background on everything. Solution, value prop, everything. All that's pretty standard too. A lot of people get that. What they don't get is, here's your calendar for the first 30 days. Here's your calendar literally by hour for the first 30 days. And we're going to have checkpoints in, we're going to do certifications, we're going to do call shadowing. Everything is scheduled for your first 30 days to make sure you are successful. make sure it's not a one day, like here's your laptop in your territory. We're going to literally spend the next 30 days investing in you, because we spent all this time finding you and recruiting you and decided you are great. We want you here to be an enablee. Now, once you're here, we are going to spend the first 30 days doing everything to make you successful.
So I want to take a step back here because, Jerry, to be honest with you, I've worked at Fortune 100s as well, many years. And I've also been in the leadership capacity, as everybody knows, managing up to $300 million a year and seeing what the onboarding process looks like for hundreds of employees. And you and I are cut from the same exact cloth. In fact, when we hire an individual that comes on into the organization, we give them the exact same thing. And I don't think people really heard what you said, and I want them to listen into now. What he talked about is you send them a welcome email that's usually about 2 weeks before you start. Now, sometimes someone might be hired, a week before their start date, whatever the case might be. I don't care if it's a week, 1 day, 2 weeks, they get a welcome email that has some information outside of seeing Jerry's face saying, welcome to the team, right? And what you said is background information about the company, industry-related information, maybe even some blog articles or white papers that you want them to take a look at prior to coming.
Yep. Here's a couple of customer videos, just why they love us. Take a look.
Excellent. Even customer videos. I love that. And when you do that, interestingly enough, that candidate is so juiced to start working for the organization that they're going to consume and read everything. And what I found is the candidates, the individuals who start that have read all of that pre-work information, white papers, ebooks, blogs, and usually we'll give them at least 5 different pieces of topics to read, right? It's a couple blogs, there's a white paper or an ebook, and then we watch the videos. In your case, you said customer testimonials, give them at least 5. Those that do all 5 advance their own individual onboarding faster than those who haven't done it at all. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wouldn't understand why you wouldn't take that opportunity to do that. If you're welcoming somebody, right, here's what you should do to prep. Here's how you want to be super successful when you get here. We want you to. We've spent all this time and energy finding you and hiring you. Now we want you to be successful. And those people, like you said, Mario, are eager to learn about the company, learn about the solution, learn about what's the sales cycle like? What are your customers like? What are they saying about you? They want to know all that. And you're absolutely right. Most of the time when people come on board, after they come on board, normally within a couple of weeks, I say, hi, 15 minutes. How was it? How's the onboarding? How's everything? I check in. And you're absolutely right. Most of them say, hey, thank you for all the stuff. I went to the website. I got more videos. I went to YouTube. I found more customers. I did more work than they asked. That means that employee shows up more well-prepared, more ready to get started, and more able to contribute quickly.
You nailed it. The contribution piece, when they're thinking and they're engaging with their peers and they're able to contribute in the meeting and ask more intelligent questions instead of the how-to or where do I go, they're actually contributing now. One of the things I read was, tell me how, and now they're making those connections. The second thing that you mentioned with this concept of hypergrowth enablement is you prepare their calendar for the first 30 days. And they know what it is prior to walking in. Now, this is actually, I've never done this before, and I love this idea. We usually give them the calendar on the day of and say, here's what we're going to do on a week-over-week basis. This is what kind of that schedule will look like, and we'll walk you through. I've never thought about doing it in advance. Tell me, why do you do it in advance as opposed to like day of or within that first week?
I think there's a couple reasons we do it more in advance. So, we're very rigid in our process when people come on board. There's a lot of information to get to know people, the company customers. There's a lot that's required. And we want people to know what is coming, right? So doing it in advance, you could be like, okay, I know on the 4th day of the 2nd week, I'm doing my product certification. Okay, I know on the 9th day of this week, I am doing my, corporate overview pitch. Right? You have all these things, and you also have, here's book time where you can study, book time you can shadow, book time. When you know exactly what's coming and what's expected of you and what you're going to contribute, then you're more productive and you contribute faster. So we do it ahead.
I love that. So what's coming helps you to know that, and then what's expected. It lays out the expectations. On the what's coming part, This is actually kind of interesting. Every time I hire somebody, I say, listen, in your first 90 days, you're going to be so overwhelmed. And I guarantee you this, that at some point you're going to say, did I make the right decision? Because you're learning systems, process, technology, methodology, you're learning tools, all these things. And you're like, oh my gosh, like there's so much expected. And oh, by the way, by your 90th day, you're expected to start contributing now something to the organization, right? Whether that's appointments or whether that's revenue. By that point, you're being expected. So to know what's coming, I think, I don't know if this is what you meant by that, but it actually helps someone to plan out their personal life to support their business life. If they know in that first 30 days that I'm heads down 8 to 5 and I've got to pick up somebody at 3:45 every single day, well, guess what? I'm going to make alternate arrangements to have somebody help assist during that time period because they know what's expected and they know what's coming down the pipe. And that really helps with the focus and dedication in that first 30 days. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah, Mario, you're exactly right. Like, when there is a lot coming at you, and a lot is coming at you, and even by any new company, a lot comes after you. You're trying to do a lot of stuff. If you can prepare and plan, for example, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I pick up my daughters from daycare, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I have to leave early. So if I know in the next 30 days, every Tuesday and Thursday, I know that I have to, so I'm planning for it. So, but if I didn't know and suddenly came around today and I had to go do a certification, that would be a problem for a new employee, right? So we're trying to make sure it's the best for the new employee and the best also for the contributions that they make. So the best way to do that is to make sure that both of us are working off the same plan.
Such a great concept there. So you called that hypergrowth enablement, and this is all really pre-focus work to help prepare the individual to get them ready to go. Anything else in terms of this concept of hypergrowth enablement that you wanted to mention?
For me, when we've scaled companies, and I've been fortunate enough to be part of several companies that scaled. I started with 2 at Dropbox, and we on the enterprise sales team went through 100 million in the IPO. When I was at Scout, I think I was employee 40 before. After 2 years, we sold to Workday. The way to really scale is you got to have a repeatable process that can go with lots and lots of people and simple enough to follow. Right. So when you go from 75 to 500 and you're trying to onboard all those people, you have to have a set process that's simple to follow, that everyone can go. Or you can't hire 83 people a quarter like we did last quarter, or 94 the quarter before, because you can't get them all through the system and get them all onboarded unless you have it set out ahead. So hypergrowth enablement really comes down to the planning, the preparation, the scale, and the simplicity of it, making sure people understand why they're doing things.
Yeah, fair enough. Makes total sense. Got it. All right. You spoke about the word hiring several times, and I want to kind of switch gears on this topic, and I'd love to get your opinion. We talk about hiring diversity in sales, and I have some very strong opinions about this, and namely around what is really important for an organization and why it's important for an organization to bring diversity inside of the sales organization. I don't know your opinions on this one because we actually haven't spent any time over a drink talking about this yet, but talk a little bit about this concept of hiring diversity in sales. Should we not, and why?
I think it's super important, and it's super important. I often speak to people about this, hiring diversity, and you can run into a lot of problems. And I've seen it in a lot of big companies. And a lot of big companies they say it's the beer test. You've heard this, right? Who would you want to have a beer with? That's absolutely the wrong way to go hire people, because you would never hire somebody different than you. That you would never hire me. Now, if you're in the Bay Area, for example, and if you're a software company, you can go over and you can recruit at great schools like St. Mary's and Cal and all that stuff. But then they recruit from those same schools. And those are great schools with a lot of diversity there. But they don't normally go expand beyond the people and circle of friends that they have. You have to almost put a regimented focus on it, right? And our regimented focus is, I believe there's so much talent there in so many diverse places that we go to places where none of us have been before. We go to schools, we go to locations, we go to industries. Literally at our company, we'll go, okay, we have no one from this school or this industry. We have a lot of manufacturing customers. What are great people to go to sell to manufacturers? people who've worked in manufacturing. Where is most of the manufacturing? In the central and East Coast of the United States. So if you look at our employee base, we normally go over there. But if you're like Oracle, SAP, nothing wrong with it, but they have a call center that I was part of it, by the way, in in Emeryville, and then they put people through, so they're getting local people and they bring it through. That is not a diverse sales organization. That is not a diverse people. Same friends, same thought method, same methodology, same way of thinking. All right. You have to really focus, I think, to get a diversified sales organization, and it only benefits you. It only benefits you. More opinions.
So oftentimes we get onto the topic of diversity in sales, and we talk about diversity in ethnic backgrounds or gender. I really appreciate how your topic on diversity here was actually didn't mention diversity in background related to culture and or ethnicity or other metrics that you might measure diversity in. But you mentioned, hey, we're targeting schools. We're targeting specific areas. We're targeting industries, people that may actually work in manufacturing, but not necessarily have this particular expertise. And how do we bring in that diversity of talent? Like, how did you come up with this plan? Was that somebody in recruiting that said, or HR that said, hey, let's try this? Or did you come in with a playbook that said, man, if we can do da, 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 like, how did you come up with this idea?
I wish I was smart enough to have that playbook. Then maybe you could help me write a book and we can go. So what I've noticed and experienced over the years in the technology industry, and I think the software industry needs to change. I think this has been a real, and I was one of them, right? I grew up, was in inside sales, went through the corporate machine, both at Oracle and SAP, and I was covering accounts in Michigan, right? Manufacturing, and Nebraska. And there was nothing wrong with that. But I didn't have the background for that. I was had gone through the corporate America. The great thing when you look at industries and schools is culture normally comes in with that. Culture normally comes in with those backgrounds. Gender normally comes in with those backgrounds. As long as you're looking for other areas besides, here's where my corporate headquarters is, here's my training program, here's the one school I went to. One company I worked at literally would only hire from Ivy League schools. Literally, I have no idea how I got there. They literally would only hire from Ivy League schools, and they would even take applications. They wouldn't even review it. Now they changed after a while, but and I was like, if all your people are going to come from Penn, fine, it's a great school. What's the background and diversity you have? They have some there, but they probably don't have any manufacturers or retailers or distributors.
Gotcha. Right, roger that. Okay, very good. So the focus then for any organization or any leader leading a team is to come up with a plan. And who do they partner with to develop this plan? Like who's your not accountability partner? Who's your partner to help come up with this idea and to solidify it?
Well, I think you have to do it across everybody. Everyone's got to buy into this, because if you're running, field operations, and I include sales, BDRs, operations, enablement, I include the talent on my team and solution self on board. But if you don't have the rest of the executive team on board with this, you don't have your hiring managers and your leadership team, I think you really have to put a focus on it. We as an executive team actually put a focus on this. We look at all our hiring, we look at where they're from, we look at their experiences, we look at their region, their geography, and their diversity. And we look at everybody and we say, okay, where should we put a focus? Not because we need to publish anything, because we're a private company, but we do it because we know it'll help our growth. We know it's better for our company. It'll be better for people coming on to us. So there's got to be an overall message from the entire executive team and the leadership team.
Roger that. Okay. So we go from how do we have some hypergrowth enablement, and you talked about a strategy of really helping an individual onboard before they even onboard, right? And then preparing their entire onboarding process right up front so they know what to expect, as well as what's coming down the pipe. And then we talk about, making sure that we're hiring diverse thought, backgrounds, experience, industry, schools, and areas. And now we get to we've picked out our person. We know who we're hire. We decide to hire them. We do the pre-enablement things that you talked about. Now let's talk about metrics and KPIs and how we measure this sales organization for hyper growth. But before you talk about that, we're going to listen to this message from our program sponsor.
Korn Ferry understands talent, and in the sales world, it's no different. Korn Ferry transforms sales teams using their world-class Miller-Hyman methodology, employee assessments, benchmarking, and talent advisory capabilities to increase win rates and quota attainment. Korn Ferry offers Korn Ferry Sell, a sales effectiveness app available in AppExchange and AppSource that helps your sales team develop and replicate powerful sales strategies that help sellers win more deals and crush their quotas. Learn more at kornferry.com/sales effectiveness. That's kornferry.com/sales effectiveness.
Okay, right before that break, I asked you to talk about some of the critical metrics and KPIs that a leader should be looking at and measuring daily, weekly, monthly. Talk about that.
Yeah, it's amazing to me, Mario, and you've led large sales organization, and you talk about a playbook. Like, you cannot simply say, here's our metrics and every single person should do this and here's what it is today. You can't improve what you can't measure. That's true. I believe that firmly. I believe that. And I'm sure you've had lots of very experienced salespeople, reps say, I don't need outbound metrics. I don't need to do this, right? How many experienced reps have you had to say that? Not true. Not true. Now, maybe they need less, but I think you really have to understand your business, and you really have to look at your business, and you have to change and adapt. What do I need for a BDR that's covering large enterprise accounts? What do I need for an account executive covering our small and medium business? What are those weekly, monthly, quarterly metrics? There are metrics. Everyone has metrics, myself included, by the way. I metric how many customers I see. I metric how many of our top talent that I go talk to in my org. I measure how many of time I spend with our board. So these are some of my metrics. Now, everyone needs to have them because you can't improve it unless you measure it. You just need to be able to adjust it. You can't say no sales cycle is the same for any company, right? My sales cycle is different from anyone else. You can learn from it. You can say, okay, we do B2B enterprise software. We can probably do X amount of deals a quarter per segment. How do I measure to get that number? And how do I measure to improve that number? So while I'm a huge proponent of metrics, everyone's got to have a metric. I also understand that you need to make them right for your company, and you need to make them right for the individual groups within your team.
So what would that look like? Are we talking about appointments? Are we talking about calls? Are we talking about obviously there's quota, of course, but going back to some of the basics, is there anything unique or different in terms of what you're talking about than what we normally would track as associated with sales folks?
I don't know if it's unique or different, but I think finding those activities and also being very regimented about monitoring them and holding people accountable to them. For an example, we measure high value activities. And for us, a high value executive meeting, there are 6 components of a high value activity that we measure. We measure everything someone does, but leaving a voicemail isn't a high value activity for us. You should still leave certain voicemails because X amount of voicemails get a response. But we can tell you on average, the number of high value activities it takes you to get to your first deal because we measure it. So we're like, if you do 98 high value activities, you're going to get your first deal within 10%. Think about that. Someone starts, we say, if you do 98 high value activities, 98. It's a little different each market segment, but on average, 98, you're going to get your first deal. We can predict that out by the action people take each and every day. And they say, no, I'm an enterprise rep. I don't need to do videos or something. That's not true. High value activities will get you out of that. So I don't know if it's different, but I definitely think everyone says it and people rarely enforce it. Number one, enforce it or monitor on how to improve it.
Well, I'll tell you something that you did say differently, Jerry, that we all as leaders let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? We all as leaders think we're doing and or say that they should be doing, but don't measure it. Here you go. Leaders have a meeting requirement with customers or prospective customers.
Yep.
Do you know how many sales managers that I find that are involved in meetings, but the director or VP is not?
No, I can't imagine.
And worse yet, even the chief sales officer or the chief revenue officer, right? Or people in your position. What happens is inevitably you get so caught up in the meetings and the managing of the day-to-day business and the muck and mire that we forget the most important thing, and that's being out with the customers. Or we see CROs and CSOs spend only high value time, or the what they consider these important meetings with the huge, large, behemoth prospective customers, but forgetting about these smaller ones. And I guarantee to you, if you were to line up 100 leaders and you said to them, do you expect your leaders to be out in front of customers? Every one of them would say yes. But now if you ask them, do you measure whether or not they're doing it and hold them accountable? I would say 10% would say yes.
I think that's probably a high number, Mario. You're being very generous, I think. But I understand it. It's easy to get caught up in, I gotta, get ready for this board presentation. I have an investor calling, or hey, I have to do this hire. It's super easy. So we focus on it. We focus on it in every way. We believe in leading by example here, everybody, including me. And so we focus on it. We measure the amount of customer meetings you go to at every level, myself included. I tell you how many every week, how many I should go to and how many I aim for. And even to the shortest thing, we do a monthly call blitz, and we measure everybody. Every sales leader, every sales VP, we measure me. How many calls I make? I make 40 on average. But by the way, I haven't set a meeting in like 3 months. I'm really bad. but when I go into an office and I sit with the team and I make my calls for 2 hours, I lead by example, and we measure everything and we publish it. Here's all the leaders, and here's all the AEs and the BDRs, and here's how many calls they made this day. So it's little things like that I think are super important.
Yeah, and I also do believe, I love what you said about, in high value accounts or these larger accounts, it takes 98 high value activities to be able to produce a close one deal, right? And that's a metric that I can wrap myself around, because sometimes right now, like call completions, meaning I've actually spoken to somebody live, is at an all-time low right now. It's less than 3%. Email response rates to outbound prospecting, not inbound, outbound, is also at an all-time low, less than 2%. And then you've got so much muck and mire now being used within social, right? That, social, where it used to be a high value asset that you could get somebody, that's also a challenge. And then also there's many people have become so comfortable at not going out into the field and or going to events. And that's okay, because they can work from home permanently, that they do their job remotely, and you'll never see them at, events that you normally would have seen them at over 3 years ago, or a little over 2 years ago. So this is extremely important, I think, and leaders who are listening in, my best advice is to take what Jerry says and ask yourself, are we expecting it great from leaders? And if so, are you measuring it? Is there a leaderboard that you have for all of your VPs, all of your directors, all of your managers, at how many customer meetings they were involved with? And then think about this, measure for the number of deals that closed one, what levels were actually involved in that opportunity to get that deal across the finish line. And there you'll find out probably a formula, like to what you're saying, Jerry. I would assume that if you have a manager, director, and VP involved in every one of your deals, that you have a 60-something% or whatever the percentage is, close rate, versus only a director versus only a manager, your odds of closing goes down. I'm sure there's probably some metric behind that, and that would be some great data there to publish.
Yeah, we measure it, and here's what we measure. At certain sales stages, we start getting other people involved, right? First the sales director, then the sales VP, then someone gets a reach out from me or our CEO. Literally at certain sales stages, these are benchmarks that we have to clear to get to the next sales stage. We think it's super critical. And we believe it's a contact sport. We measure, if you go on site at a customer, like you said, now it's really easy to hide behind screens. The on site at a customer, we're over 80%. That means we need to get on site. We need to get to see our customers because we are closing a lot of business when we go see them. So we literally have a point in every stage where we ask, can we come tour your facility? Can we come look at your up? We want to see your business and understand it because we want to help you run your business better, but we need to be able to witness it. So we actually have a sales stage where we ask this question.
Got it. Now let's talk about, we talked about measuring, right? These critical metrics and KPIs. How do you maintain performance standards now? Some may argue that you're measuring too much and it becomes too much for the sales organization. So how do you maintain performance standards?
Well, you're right. There is a point where, your analysis paralysis, right? You're measuring everything in the world. You have to find and it changes for us, right? I'm having been here 2 years, what I looked at when we first started, when we had 28 customers, is vastly different than the thousands of customers that I have now that I look at. So there are different things we look at. So I wish I could tell you, here's the magic formula. Here's the panacea. Just do these 3 things. It changes. But I'll tell you what doesn't change. A relentless focus on customers. And as long as we are measuring things with customers on site, how many customers have you called, had a meeting with, as long as you're measuring those, you're going to do just fine. I think you're going to do just fine. Everything else can be up for debate.
Roger that. All right, good. Well, we're coming up on close to time here.
Time's flying, Mario. It's so much fun hanging out with you.
Good. I love it. Creating customer focus. I know this is a topic near and dear to your heart, about creating customer focus. We oftentimes hear of sales folks who are just going out there focusing on making the deal, and then they move on to the next one. And even organizations who, once you've closed something, hand it off to a different salesperson that is the account management team that manages from there on out. There's some of these focus on hunting, and then the farming process takes place, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. What does this mean to you, creating customer focus, and how do you do it?
Yeah, it's really hard to have a customer-focused organization. And it's not, everyone says it. Everyone says we are customer first, we are a customer-focused organization. For me, being very customer-focused is knowing your customer better than anyone else. One of my top reps, she covered an airline. And if you called her and said, before they became a customer of ours, and said, tell me about your customer. It's not just calling her back. She'd be like, here's their most profitable flight route. Here's their next major hub that they're opening. And here's how much cost they're getting with each of these. And here's how each of the executive teams are bonused. You now know your customer. You know your customer super well. Having that focus and teaching that, it's hard. That's a hard thing to do. But when you talk to anybody about an account or their customer, you have to talk to them about their business. So we ask our reps and our managers and everything else, tell us about what the customer does. It's literally in our first sales stage. Tell us what business they're in. Tell us what their advantage is. Tell us what they're trying to do to grow. If you can answer those 3 or 4 simple questions and you build it into your sales process, you're going to get a more customer-focused organization.
All right. I'm with you on that one. And talking about this requires us to be teaching, learning as an individual contributor, as well as from the leadership level, right? So what is required of me as a leader or as an individual contributor to be able to create this customer focused environment you're talking about?
Yes, definitely. It becomes a teaching and learning moment, right? I try to say we teach and learn every day. Everyone is my superior in some way. In that, I try to learn them, right? I learned acronyms, text acronyms from the BDR team, but they're really good at social selling, right? Just like they're much better at it than I am. So they say, here's the formula to use on LinkedIn to follow somebody, to track somebody, and here's how you do it across multiple social media accounts. So I learn a lot from them on that and that. So for us, we have to teach and learn from each other. So we try to bring it up in a very structured way. And by a structured way, we will have different backgrounds, different experience levels, different roles, lead courses on our customers. They'll say, we start every meeting with a customer story, and we have a different person lead it, and we ask them how they did their research. How did you do this? And they say, I read the letter to shareholders. I went to an annual report. I did background on Google and Facebook and social something. I did like, these are all ways that we all learn. So we all learn from each other. So it's been a unique experience doing this remotely for a couple of years, and now we're starting to do back in the office.
Love all those individual thoughts, Jerry, but help me bring this home. Right. When you focus in on hiring a diversification having a diversification hiring strategy, if that's the right way to say it, hypergrowth enablement, managing these critical metrics and KPIs, really focusing in on the customer, and then monitoring what you expect from both the leadership and individuals. Like, what are some of the outcomes? And maybe it's enables outcomes like what you're doing, but what are some of the outcomes that you've seen?
Yeah, it's really amazing when you think of all those different pieces and how you wrap it together. And I'm very fortunate that I work with such a wonderful team that I've worked with a lot of places. Most of the team that I've worked with here, we've worked either at SAP, Dropbox, Workday Scout, 4 or 5 companies together, and they bring it together. And most of them have very different backgrounds. So it's interesting. Some of them are from remote places in Michigan or Indianapolis or Florida. All of them are different culturally, education-wise. A lot of them are diverse in terms of gender. Most of my leadership team are female. I'm proud of that. And what we've done is they've come in and they've helped build the program. So they've helped wrap all that stuff together in terms of here's who we go recruit and how does that help us with customers. Then we go out to customers and we're talking with them, with people with their industry or their background or their knowledge, and that's helped us really grow. We went from 38 to thousands of customers in 2 years because of people who work from different backgrounds, different cultures, different diversity, and how did they bring in and create a program together that encompasses all those key points: how to train someone, how to get them onboarded, how to go find them, how to get them talking to customers, how to get them talking to a customer-focused story. Remember that one rep I shared with you who knew all about the airline and which routes were profitable and stuff? She runs a team of 75 now, and every day with her AEs and her managers saying, what business are they in? What's their strongest point? So she's teaching and learning all this. So it's great when you see all this start to come together and the deliverables and the outcomes we get.
Love it, man. If somebody wants to connect with you, what's the best way? Is it LinkedIn, Twitter? How should they do it?
I'm a simple Jerry at Enable.com. Send me a message.
All right. Send you a message. Fantastic. And then for those of you looking for Jerry on LinkedIn, you can find him at Jerry, as you normally would spell it, Jerry, Brooner, BROONER. But hey, make sure when you reach out to him that you tell him you heard him on the Modern Selling podcast. Put it as a personalized LinkedIn connection request message. And if you don't know how to do it, shame on you. Just hit the personalized button underneath the more on mobile, or hit connect and add a note when you're on desktop there on LinkedIn. Jerry, I got one last question for you, buddy, and that is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
Yeah, hands down, easily. But before I answer that, Mario, it was so exciting speaking with you. Thank you for inviting me. Congratulations on your 6-year podcast. Amazing work. Congratulations. Big fan. All-time favorite movie, Cool Hand Luke.
Cool Handler?
Cool Hand Luke. Paul Newman.
Cool Hand Luke. Oh, yeah.
Paul Newman, when his first breakout, talk about somebody with determination, determined with creativity, and just outright commitment. What a great show. What a great show.
I think that's the first time we've had Cool Hand Luke on the podcast in 6 years and over 200 episodes. So Cool Hand Luke it is. Hey, all of you guys listening in right now, don't turn that dial just quite yet. Listen to this very important message right now.
Korn Ferry sales effectiveness solutions are increasing win rates by over 20%. Find out how they can help your sales team. Visit kornferry.com/sales effectiveness. That's kornferry.com/sales effectiveness. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Oh, and don't forget, if you'd like to save 20 hours or more in a month and increase your productivity, go right now and download Fly Message, that's flymsg.io, for free. It's your free text expander and personal writing assistant. Hey, thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.